Hello children, let me welcome you to the virtual training center of the Brihan Mumbai Mahanagar Palika. My name is Shraddha teacher. Children, we are in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, isn't it? Because of that, we are not able to go to school, but that doesn't mean that we are going to stop learning. We are going to meet here regularly through the virtual training center to learn many lessons in EVS. So come on, let's go to a lesson in EVS. Children, let us start with another lesson in standard 4th, and the subject is EVS 2. Now children, as we already discussed earlier, this particular textbook itself is called as Shiva Chhatrapati. So what are we learning in this course book or in this particular textbook? We are learning about the life and times of Shivaji Maharaj. Now, in the previous lessons, we talked about Maharashtra before Shivaji, we talked about the work of saints, we talked about Maratha Sardars, and we talked about the famous house of the Bhosles. Then in the lesson which we learnt just before this particular lesson, we talked about Shivaji's childhood. So now in this lesson, that is lesson number 5, we are going to discuss and talk about Shivaji's education. So it is natural that after a child is born and after it becomes a little big, it starts learning. How does it start learning? The parents sent these children to school, just like all of us, isn't it? So in the same way, Shivaji Maharaj also got a lot of education. He learnt a lot of things. Of course, maybe not like us, not like going to a regular school, but he had so many teachers who taught him many things in life. So let us see what was Shivaji's education like, what all things did he learn, and who were the people or who were the persons who influenced the educational part of Shivaji's life. So this will be part 1 of this particular lesson, lesson number 5, Shivaji's education. So let us start by talking about Shivaji's father, that is Shahaji Raje. Now Shahaji Raje himself was a scholar of Sanskrit. Now Sanskrit is one of the oldest of languages, okay, and in India, if you see, Sanskrit is the mother, you can say, or Sanskrit is the language which has given birth to many other Indian languages. So Shahaji Raje, he himself was a scholar of Sanskrit. Now as we all learnt in the previous lesson, he settled down in Bangalore, we saw, na? And he made the city of Bangalore his headquarters, and he began living there in a big palace and just like a king. So when he was in Bangalore, he had under his patronage artists and scholars of various languages. So there were many people who were working under him, who were learning under him, and who were great scholars, and also who were artists, that is, they were very good singers, they were very good dancers, etc. So Shivaji's father also was a very, very educated person. So he wanted his son also to be educated. He wanted his son also to become a very learned person. And for that reason, he appointed intelligent teachers for Shivaji Maharaj when he was a child. So you can see here in this picture, Shivaji Maharaj's father, Shahaji Raje, and Bal Shivaji, or Shivaji as a child, and some of the teachers who would go on and make Shivaji what he was later. Okay, so in this picture you can see the teachers of Shivaji Maharaj, and you can see how his father appointed various teachers for Shivaji Maharaj. So Shivaji became skilled in the art of reading and writing. So like all of us, when we go to school, what do we learn first? We learn how to speak, we learn how to read, we learn how to write. So in the same way, Shivaji Maharaj also learned how to read, how to write. Okay, and when he started reading books like the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavata, etc. on his own. So when he started reading all these books. And you remember when we talked about the previous lesson, I told you that his mother also used to tell him stories from the Ramayana, from the Mahabharata, etc. And he used to get very inspired by listening to these stories, the stories of all these brave people, okay, like Arjuna, So Shivaji Maharaj, when he started reading, he began to read these stories on his own. Stories from the Ramayana, from the Mahabharata, from the Bhagavad, etc. And now the knowledge which is in the books is not enough, or it was not enough in those times. So a king or a ruler or his sons, they also had to learn to use various weapons. So it is not like today's schools. Okay, today in the school you're taught various subjects, that's all, and you're taught many practical things, like you're taught sports, music, etc. But in those times, along with all this, children were also taught how to use various weapons. Okay, so Shivaji's education began when he became 7 years old. So when he was 7, all these things started happening in his life. And then his teachers also taught him how to ride a horse. So how many of us today know how to ride a horse? Most of us don't, isn't it? Because we cannot see horses around us. Nowadays we have scooters, we have motorbikes, we have auto rickshaws, we have cars. So but in those times, these were the things which were the various mode of transport. So people used to use horses, camels, etc. So they used to teach Shivaji how to ride a horse. And Shivaji was a king. He would later on become a king like his father. So he had to know how to ride a horse. Alright, so they taught him how to ride a horse. Along with that, they also taught him how to wrestle. Now what is wrestling? Wrestling is called as kushti. So you must have seen this on TV sometimes, how people wrestle each other, how they try to show their strength when they wrestle. Okay, so he also learned how to wrestle. He also learned how to develop his muscles, and then he also learned the use of swords, how to make use of the sword, talwar as we call it. And also there was another sword which was little flexible, and it was called as the dandapatta. So he also learned the use of the dandapatta. So Shivaji, slowly and slowly, he started learning so many different things. Alright, and his education began on a very, very positive note. Now when all this was happening, at the age of 12, you can say that Shivaji became acquainted with different branches of learning and art. So he already learned how to read, and now he could read the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and he also learned how to use various weapons. He also learned how to ride a horse, etc. Now when all this was happening, there were some other changes also which were taking place. So Adil Shah, he sent Shivaji Maharaj's father, Shahaji Raje, on an expedition to conquer the state of the Nayakas. Now who are the Nayakas? The Nayakas are the local Sardars or the local chiefs. In which place? In Karnataka. So see, here in Karnataka, he asked Shahaji Raje to go and conquer the places or the states or the territories which belonged to the Nayakas. So now Adil Shah had to move from Bangalore, isn't it? So what Adil Shah thought, it would be best if he settled Jijabai and Shivaji Raje somewhere else. And so for that reason, what did he do? Shahaji Raje sent Shivaji and Jijabai to Pune. He thought it is best if they go back to Pune. So he sent Shahaji Raje and Jijabai to Pune. He did not send them alone. He sent them, if he fortified them, or he made them very strong when he was sending them to Pune. So what did he do? He sent elephants, he sent horses, he sent an infantry, a treasure, a flag, and also trusted ministers, brave generals, and renowned teachers. So he did not just send them just like that. Okay, he sent them, he made them strong, and he sent so many things along with them so that they could go and they could take care of Pune, or they could rule Pune well. So here we have again Shivaji Maharaj moving back to Maharashtra. So Shivaji Maharaj along with Jijabai, they moved back to Pune. And let us now talk about the rejuvenation of Pune. Rejuvenation means new life which was given to Pune. Now when Jijabai and Shivaji Maharaj returned to Pune, Shivaji Maharaj remembered all his childhood days which he had spent on Shivneri Fort. You remember the place where he was born. Okay, he remembered all those incidents and he started fondly remembering, and he could almost see the lofty peaks of the Sahyadris again, and he became very, very happy. He also remembered all the good times that he had spent with his friends. So remember we talked about the various games that Shivaji played with his Mavla friends. Okay, hide and seek, and they used to play with a ball. They used to play so many different games. They used to build forts. So Shivaji Maharaj remembered all these things. See, they were making forts. So he started enjoying the thought that he will come back to Pune and he will get to play with his friends. He will get to meet his friends again. But children, at that particular point of time, Pune was not such a big city, and it was totally devastated by Shahaji Raje's enemies. Devastated means destroyed. So Shahaji Raje's enemies used to attack Pune time and again, and it was totally destroyed. It was totally in ruins. Okay, the condition of Pune city was not at all good. So there were properties which were damaged, houses had collapsed, even temples had collapsed because there was no one to look after all these places anymore. So when the enemy comes and attacks a place again and again and again, what happens? People die, people lose their lives. Okay, so what do? In order to save their lives, they start running away from such places. So in the same way, the frightened people of Pune, they had fled from their villages. They had left their villages and they had run away. Okay, and the fields had become barren. Barren means what? Now no one was cultivating anything there. People had run away. They had given up their houses and they had run away, and the fields became barren. Okay, they became banjar, you can say in Hindi. And thick forests had grown. Where there were trees, where there were fields, there were big trees now, because no one was cutting the trees and no one was cultivating, no one was tilling the land. And then wild animals like wolves, they started roaming in the countryside. So you can see how these wild animals started troubling the people, whoever few people were there. These wild animals started troubling those people very badly. It was in this situation, or it was in this kind of a, you can say, a surrounding or environment, that Shivaji and Jijabai came back to Pune. Now they were very, very troubled and they were very, very upset looking at Pune, which was totally in shambles and ruins. Shambles means fully in a state of mess. Alright, there was nothing which was in order there. And it was in ruins. Ruins means it was all tuta futa. It had all become like a khandar. Okay, so now these two were very, very worried. But then what happened is, Jijabai, she was a very strong and very brave lady. She was a lady with a lot of determination and courage. When the people living around came to know that Jijabai had returned to Pune with Shivaji, they took heart. They took heart means they became little happy, and they started getting hopeful that now someone will come and improve our situation. So that is called as taking heart. Jijabai called all of them and reassured them that they would be safe in Pune. That is, she called them and she said that don't worry, now don't leave your houses and run away. Come back to your homes. Now I am there. I will take care of you. I will see to it that you are protected and you are safe. So then what happened is, people believed her, they had a lot of faith in her, and so they started settling back in Pune. They started cultivating their lands. You can see how this person is farming. They started cultivating their lands, and also Jijabai took upon herself the very, very important responsibility of restoring the temples. Okay, so Jijabai had the dilapidated temples repaired. Look at the word, it is dilapidated. Means what? The broken down temples. Temples which were broken down. So these are dilapidated. She had them repaired. Alright, and after the temples were repaired, she also started worshipping or doing puja there in the temples in the morning and in the evening. So everything slowly and slowly, the life of the people started becoming normal. Okay, people started getting safer, they started feeling better, and they started getting happier also. And thus now the town started throbbing with people. Throbbing means what? It became alive with people. There was a lot of people moving around, and there was a lot of noise, and there was a lot of rush, and it started, the whole place became alive. Thus Pune was totally transformed. That is why we call it as the rejuvenation of Pune. Okay, so this was a story about how Shivaji Maharaj, along with his mother Jijabai, came back to Pune and how they rejuvenated the place called Pune. Now let us move on and talk about a very, very important person in the life of Shivaji Maharaj, who stood with him in his bad times also, and that was Dadaji Konde. But before that, let us see how Shivaji Maharaj and his mother came back to Pune and transformed it completely. So they were responsible for the transformation or rejuvenation of Pune. Okay, now let us talk about the achievements of Dadaji Konde. So this person is Dadaji Konde. Can you see the image on the screen? Such a powerful looking person, isn't it? Look at his eyes. They are so bright, and he seems to be so brave. Now when Shivaji and Jijabai were in Karnataka, Dadaji Konde looked after the Pune Jagir. He was the person who was looking after the Jagir of Pune. But along with that, he also was the Subedar of Kondana. So the fort of Kondana was under his charge. Now, he was a very faithful person. He was very strict. He was very efficient, and he was very honest in his work. He was also very just, and he was a strict disciplinarian that you can see from his face, isn't it? He was a very strict person. He was a disciplinarian, that is, he liked to live a life of discipline, and he served Shivaji Maharaj's father Shahaji Raje with a lot of devotion. And at the same time, you will see that there was a very big vada, or a very big palace or residence, which was being built in Pune by the orders of Shahaji Raje. It came to be known as the Lal Mahal. Okay, so this place is Lal Mahal. If you go to Pune even today, you will see this place standing as it is. Now it is a heritage structure. That is, the government is doing its best in order to maintain and protect this particular structure. So what is this place called? It is called as the Lal Mahal. Okay, it was built by the orders of Shahaji Raje. Now, in order to encourage the peasants, now after Jijabai came back, the peasants came back, and now Dadaji Konde also played an important role in order to encourage the peasants to till their lands. So what did he do? He gave them concessions in the land tax for a few years. Now just like we pay income tax now, people used to pay tax in those times also. So people were troubled, and they were just starting to settle back again. So Dadaji gave them concessions, and also he offered prizes too for various reasons. Now one reason was the wolves, which used to come into the forest, into the villages, and used to trouble the people, eat the cattle, eat the hens, etc. So he offered prizes to people for destroying the wolves, which infested the countryside and harassed the peasants. Now many wolves were also killed. Okay, and along with that, he raised various peasant patrols to protect the life and property from gangs of thieves who roamed the countryside. So patrol means what? A kind of a group or army of people, you can say, who would walk around in the night and protect their people. And he also fixed the land revenue according to the quality of the soil. So imagine if you have a field where the soil is not at all good and you're not able to produce anything there. But then if you have to pay a huge amount as tax, then what will you do? You will be very, very troubled. So what he used to do? He used to inspect the land, and then he used to decide about the tax depending on the fertility of the land. So see how many efforts he took in order to make his people happy. Now, because of all these reasons, you can see that the people became very, very happy. Alright, so what are the achievements of Dadaji Kondev? Let us see once again. When Jijabai and Shivaji were in Karnataka, Dadaji Kondev looked after the Jagir of Pune, and he was also the Subedar of Kondana. He was very faithful, and you will see that he was very strict, he was very efficient and honest in his work, and along with that he was also a very strict disciplinarian. And he took many steps in order to see to it that the people of Pune are happy, they are protected. Alright, so this was about the achievements of Dadaji Kondev. Now let us come back and focus on Shivaji's education. So when Shivaji returned to Pune, his education continued under the supervision of his mother Jijabai. Okay, now when he was returning from Pune, like I told you, there were many eminent teachers also who came with them, along with sending a lot of elephants and along with sending an infantry, treasury and flags and brave generals and ministers. Shahaji Raje also had sent a few, or you can say a number of very, very eminent teachers who would teach Shivaji Maharaj. Okay, and they taught him many things in life. Like for example, his teachers taught him many sciences, and they taught him many different branches of learning, and also they taught him many languages. Alright, so the science that we learn today and the science that Shivaji Maharaj might have learnt in those times were of course different. Alright, but then nevertheless he learnt sciences, he learnt about the rising and setting of the sun, and maybe he learnt about how time is calculated. Okay, so many things he must have learnt from his teachers. And also languages. So the language which Shivaji Maharaj spoke was Marathi. So maybe he learnt Kannada, maybe he learnt Telugu, maybe he learnt Tamil. So he learnt so many different languages also, apart from Sanskrit, of course, which all of them knew. Okay, so this is how Shivaji Maharaj started learning, or this is what his education was about. So Shivaji Maharaj mainly was taught by his mother. He acquired the knowledge of excellent administration. Now, what is the meaning of administration? Administration means to take wise decisions while ruling. So, a king who is a good administrator is a good king. So, Shivaji Maharaj's mother taught him how to become an excellent administrator. And then later on, when we see the other lessons in this textbook, you will realize that yes, indeed, Shivaji Maharaj was a great administrator. He used to manage his Swaraj, or he used to manage his kingdom really well. He would guide people, he would help people, he would also punish people who were not up to the mark. So all this he learned from his teachers and from his mother. Along with administration, a good leader, a good king should also know war tactics. War tactics means how to take decisions in wars, how to use your presence of mind when you are in a war-like situation. So all these things Shivaji Maharaj learned as a child. And also fort architecture. Now the forts were a very, very important part of the Swaraj of Shivaji Maharaj. We all know this. Okay, so now the architecture, that is how to make the forts more useful, how to make the forts inaccessible. That is, if someone attacks you, then they should not be able to enter the fort. Okay, you should be safe, you and your people should be safe inside the fort. So how can you do that? How do you make such a fort? So all these things Shivaji Maharaj learnt as a child. And also how he could escape from difficult enemy territories. So there is a very interesting story about how Shivaji escaped from prison, okay, that we will be seeing in the later part of the textbook, or the later lessons, you can say. So Shivaji learnt all these things as a child, and all this was a very, very important part of Shivaji's education. So Shivaji was a very good student also. He was very interested, he was very sincere, and he used to obey his teachers, he used to obey his mother, and because of all these reasons, he was a favorite student of all his teachers. He also learned how to select horses, how to select elephants, okay, and many other things. Now, horses and elephants are a very important part of any king's army in those times. So a king who had a strong army is a strong king. So that was the way the kings were, you can say, judged. So if Shivaji had good horses and elephants in his army, then his army would be strong. But for that, he need to know how to select good horses, how to select good elephants. So all these things also he learned from his teachers. Okay, so you will see that Shivaji's progress in education pleased Jijabai very much. So Jijabai, his mother, was extremely happy with the way her son was learning, he was developing, and she was sure that he would grow up and he would become an able king who would rule Maharashtra, and people of Maharashtra would remember him for centuries and centuries to come. Alright, so this was the first half of our lesson, Shivaji's education. Now in the next half of this lesson, children, we will talk about what Veer Mata Jijabai taught Shivaji. Okay, she was the, you can say, the main influencer, or she was the most important teacher in Shivaji Maharaj's life. That is Veer Mata Jijabai. And we will also talk about the new regime of Shivaji, or the new rule of Shivaji. So Shivaji started ruling the Jagir of Pune under the guidance, of course, of his mother Jijabai, and how Shivaji started off as a king. That we will also see in the next part of this lesson. Okay, so that was all for today, children, in this particular video. Now after you finish watching the video, I have a few tasks for you. So let me tell you what those tasks are going to be. So children, now you have watched the video. So after you watch the video now, you will have to complete a few simple tasks. Now you might have watched the video on your computers or your laptops or your mobile phones. Now after you watch the video, what will you do? You will please go to the description box which is given below the video. So what is the description box? See, the description box looks like this. Alright, and after you go to the description box, you will see that there are a few questions there. Now what are these questions about? These questions are about the lesson that we just learned or the video that you just watched. So what will you do? You will think back properly about the lesson and you will try and answer these questions and note down the answers in your notebook if you want. Okay? After that, we have another task waiting. You will also click on the link which you will find in the description box to fill up the Google form. So now what is the Google form, children? It is nothing but a simple form. There are a few simple questions there about the video which you just saw and also about yourself. So these are the tasks now that you will have to complete after you watch each video. So children, wasn't that a very interesting lesson? I'm sure you learnt a lot of new things in this lesson. If you have liked this video, please hit the like button and also subscribe to my video so that you will get to see all the videos which I keep posting regularly.